So I gotta admit, math class definitely looks different than the math class that I remember in my life, but this world's is a completely different ballpark. So you have two characters because we announced a duel at the end of last week's episode, and in this episode you have two members that are randomly picked to take a arithmetic test. Whoever scores the best on each of the little tests they get ends up having the other person who's actually dueling, so boxing, get extra free punches in, and just the entire concept is so silly, it's so ridiculous that almost immediately, the first 6-7 minutes of this episode, I'm looking at this saying, this is weird, this is different, I don't know what they're trying to do here. But by the end of the episode, I really came to appreciate just how ridiculous and over the top the entire situation was. And once again, all I can say is I leave another episode of this show saying, everything about it feels familiar on paper, but those slight deviations turn an episode where math class is a boxing match into something that you can't find yourself comparing to other anime, and I really like that about this show. Now, I do got a full live reaction to today's episode available on my Patreon, so if you want to see my full uncut thoughts, head on over there and consider supporting, because this was a interesting episode to follow for sure. I like the fact that this show is just so unapologetically unique. It says, hey, sometimes we're gonna go traditional slime hunting, we're gonna do these things you expect in adventure series, and at other points when we're trying to relieve some drama and tension, we're going to make characters take a math test. And in return, you're going to have characters like her and believe in herself more because she actually studied and was doing rather good. I mean, the first test we saw of her, she got 18, that was her score. And throughout the test, she was getting 78, 79, in the low 80s, high 70s. And it really goes to show that she worked her butt off and she was able to actually improve. But the fact that it all boils down to dealing with Claudine, the girl who belongs to the streets, or at the very least belongs in Rent-A-Girlfriend. She would live right at home there, she'd feel comfortable, and she'd honestly have money thrown at her because the MC just doesn't have life. But you have to admit though, that even if a character has suffered and has been just tormented by horrible past trauma, that may explain why someone's like the way they are, but it doesn't excuse. That's my biggest thing. You can have the most horrible life, and yes, that can definitely explain what shaped you. It's not like you tossed out of bed one morning and you said, you know what, I'm gonna scam every boy imaginable. No. Clearly, she had an abusive, bad life back in the day. Her parents literally tried to sell her. But that doesn't excuse the current actions. And I think the conversation at the very end, when her and her partner are basically being carried off to jail, you pretty much have the conversation of yeah, that sucks, but seriously, you have to make up. Just because you suffered in the past, you can start trying to be better in the future. And I agree. Come the future of this anime, we see her legit trying to be a better person. Awesome. I'm not gonna like her on a personal level, but those types of people, if they actually try to improve their lives, sure, that is good, go get your second chance with other characters. That's perfectly acceptable. But my boy Nick, he probably is never gonna wanna look at you again, and that's his right because of the BS you did to him. And this show really is trying to hammer it in yeah, she had a bad life back in the day, but her present day character is absolute trash and she belongs to the streets. And I think that's gonna be the universal opinion of her character. Sucks that you had a bad life, but hey, people can make mistakes, you've made more than most. Be better when you get out of the slammer, but leave us the hell alone. I feel like that's the general opinion. But I really did like how, on paper, how silly, how ridiculous this whole concept was. Because when you hear duel in anime, you're thinking, okay, what type of weapons are they gonna pick? Who's gonna be their warrior? And this is hey, no. We're gonna have our two boys, they're gonna be duking it out, they're gonna be throwing their punches, and then whoever wins the scoring of each test, the person who's working with them in terms of the boxing ring gets a couple extra punches. And I love the fact that for the first two tests or so, they're pretty evenly matched, and there's no cheating, there's nothing other than their own skill levels. Yes, it's pretty basic math, all things considered, but given just, obviously, we see how hard she worked, our girl really went the extra mile and was doing us proud. But by the end, when they were hey, there's no cheating, obviously our boy Nick can't hold out forever, he's not Superman, they just slam all the tests together and then the bluffs start happening. And the way they catch the person with this old school calculator with how they're doing everything, I just thought it was so great because you have Bond pop up who's just like, oh no, she's asking about that answer right there. He's like, oh yeah, oh shit, oh, okay, I got you, I see what's going on here. I just like that. I like how goofy they were having just like fun with the entire concept and how frustrated she was getting by the point where she's just like, tell me the answer. She slams on the table and just, I mean, she pretty much exposed herself right then and there. You didn't even need to have the other person be like, come in with like all chained up. She pretty much exposed that she was cheating. There's actually a frame in this episode where she's kind of like covering her ear. And literally our old woman, I think her name's Wilma, is pretty much looking like, yeah, that looks a little suspicious, let's be honest. I just found it to be really fun. It's different. And that's kind of what I like about this show. And the thing that I've been praising about it is that the initial beginning of this show with like almost 4 different light novel protagonists, it was unique and it hooked me in. But every episode, like, even if things feel familiar on paper, right? The execution of everything, it just is so different. We've gone slime hunting, where instead of just cutting a slime, they like stick their hand into the body and rip out a crystal. You have the fusion mechanic that they did the other day. Like, just every little detail about this show, it looks familiar on paper, but the execution becomes its own unique identity. And the concept of, like, if you were to explain to someone who's never seen the show, there's an episode in this where the guild, or like the little party that they have going on, they have one member take a math test as the other member is boxing someone, and depending on who has the higher score on the test gets an extra punch or two in. People are probably going to be, it's going to be an even split. Why the hell are you watching something like that? And the other half being like, I've never heard of that before, but that sounds like the craziest thing ever. I need to see what's going to happen. And I fall in that category, being like, I don't know, that sounds so ridiculous, but give me the most ridiculous things ever. But honestly, this show is heart. I like the character buildings. I like the teamwork dynamic. I like the idea of second chances for our party. I never want to see Claudine in our party. I think, you know what, if she gets that second chance, let it be off screen. I think that's how it works, right? You hurt our characters. You made our characters suffer. Yes, you may have had a bad past. You can go get your second chance elsewhere. I think everyone can do that. If they actually change and actually become better people, go get that second chance. But leave us the hell alone. And I think that's exactly how Nick's feeling. And honestly, the show just, every time I think I know where it's going to go, I end up getting a boxing math test. And math class sure be hitting different. And literally, it be hitting different in this episode. But I mean, I'll pass the torch over to everyone. Like, what did you think of this episode? Because we're halfway through this show, right? And maybe if this was airing on the weekends, I'd be feeling a little different because I'd be having a hard time balancing this with all the other weekend shows. But the fact that I get to appreciate it, just, this is the only show I watch on Tuesday, right? I just get to soak into this one, appreciate the uniqueness. Yeah, maybe the production value isn't like the best thing ever, but even in the moments like when our girl is like stuttering and freaking out, like there's this moment where she almost looks like a bobblehead where her head's like a lot bigger than her torso, but she's freaking out because she has to be the one to take the test. The humor, even when the production slips, I almost find like the humor and the comedy direction can like hold it to be an added layer comedy, even if it wasn't intentional. So like, I like this one. I find it to be unique, different, and just, it hits different. But thoughts and feelings yourself down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell so you can get as many notifications to the channel as possible. And of course, as I mentioned, we got that full live reaction available on my Patreon, so consider supporting if you so wish. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.